Hey everyone, welcome to Diagnostics, the channel where we discuss everything medical laboratory science in Africa and around the world. Today we have our second coronavirus episode. We're going to be talking about COVID-19, the effects it had in Benin, and to help us with that, we invited a medical laboratory scientist working in a laboratory here in Benin. She'll tell us a bit about how she got into testing for COVID-19. She'll also tell us a little bit about how testing works in the country. Without much further ado, let's talk MedLab. Like I was saying, we're here today with a guest. Her name is Praise Adewumi. She's going to be talking to us about COVID-19. So how are you today, Praise?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine also, thank you. So you've been working with COVID-19 for a while now, right?
Yeah.
How long about?
Since it started,
Yeah, since the very beginning.
yes.
So since what, February, March of last year?
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you get into it? What prompted you? What made you want to get into COVID-19 testing?
I was in the lab prior to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there because I wanted experience. I wanted to gain experience and be competent in my field.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as I was in that lab, it became a center for COVID-19 diagnosis.
Yeah.
That's how I found myself
Okay.
there.
And what else did they do in the lab? What did they do in the lab before COVID-19?
Diagnostics of hemorrhagic fever.
So I guess COVID wasn't that scary then, or was it?
At first, yes, but then as time went on, we got used to it.
All right. So you got into that lab. You said is it a reference lab?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, it's a reference lab. How do you get into a reference lab? What kind of skills do you need?
Getting in there.
Like, let's say there's someone who's watching who may want to get into that kind of lab. According to you, what sort of skills would they need to be able to thrive in that sort of environment?
You need to firstly know what you want, then be a go-getter. Also, be analytical. Have those skills, because a lot of times you have to make decisions.
Okay, so you need to be someone who is proactive,
Yes.
knows how to solve problems in order to be able to thrive in that sort of environment.
Yeah, and also be competent, even if you still want to learn more, but have the basis.
Okay, what would you put as the basis?
Know your biology.
Yeah,
and then a little bit of, you might not know PCR, but then have an idea.
Yeah, of how it works.
And then you can build upon.
So I'm guessing you learned quite a lot about PCR once you started working on COVID, and probably even before that.
Before then, I only knew about the theoretical part.
And how important was PCR to the COVID testing you started doing that last year?
Very important, because it helps give you an idea of if the gene is present in sample, and also at what percentage. And the CT values actually help us to know at what percentage or degree the COVID-19 gene is present in the sample.
Okay. And is it only PCR testing that you do, or you do also some other forms of testing?
Okay, so for now, just PCR testing. But we are thinking of going into serological testing. Yeah.
Okay. So are those efficient enough to be able to help you, or how do you plan on using them? Is it for general population screening or for the actual individual testing?
I think the serological testing will be more for research purposes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now, were you trained specifically in order to be able to deal with COVID-19 when you started your testing?
Oh, yes.
What sort of training? What did you go through, just generally?
Generally, how to inactivate this type of samples.
Okay.
Though the different procedures were similar to that of Ebola and Lassa, but just slight modifications.
So that means you have to inactivate every sample before you work on it?
Yes.
Okay. So that helps with safety, of course.
Yes, it does.
What other safety measures were there? Like to
personal
ensure.
protective
Yeah.
equipment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We use disposable scrubs. So once we're done, disposable, and then gloves. We have access to a lot of gloves. So
Mm-hmm.
to be disposed. And also the face mask and
Shoot.
face shield.
Okay. Yes. Now we were talking earlier before we started. You said the inactivation is done in separately, right?
Yes.
Inactivation is done before it comes to you.
No, the inactivation is done in the same laboratory.
Okay.
Yeah. So after the reception, the inactivation is done in a separate room.
Okay.
So after the inactivation, it is sent to the extraction room to extract
Okay.
the RNA.
All right. So it's okay. So everything is compartmentalized. So you have an inactivation room, an extraction room. What else? What's the process that the sample goes through?
Okay. So in the extraction room, we have different benches. So since the sample has been inactivated, we can work on it in the same room,
Mm-hmm.
different benches. So after the extraction, we prepare the master mix, which is medium for PCR to be carried out.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, there is another bench to add the extracted RNA
Okay.
to the master mix.
Mm-hmm.
And then we proceed to run the samples.
And once the sample is run, how do you dispose of the samples?
We have agents that take care of them.
Okay.
So, are there some samples you like store? Like after you've used them, do you store them for a while before they get disposed, like at minus 20 degrees, minus 80 degrees?
Yeah. So we have highly positive samples that we store at minus 80 degrees
Okay.
for that research.
Can anybody have access to this for their research, or is it just for your lab?
For now, yeah.
Just for the lab. Makes sense. Between last year and this year, has there been a change in the number of tests you get, like for example, weekly?
Yes.
How has it changed?
Towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, we received a lot of samples.
Okay.
Per week, we were receiving about 14,000 samples.
Wow. How many people working on those 14,000
They're quite
samples? Okay, all right.
But for now, we receive, let's say, 8,000 to 9,000 samples per week.
Okay,
So it has reduced drastically.
but it's still a good number.
Mm-hmm.
8 to 9,000, yeah. It's a lot of samples.
Almost 1,500 samples
Okay.
a
A
day
day.
currently.
I guess if a lot of testing has been done, then it's a bit normal that the number should be decreasing, unless we get new variants, in which case there'll be more work. And when it comes to the effects that it has had on the population, can you give us a general idea of the number of infected, those who have survived? Do you have any idea what those are?
Okay, so as of today, about 7,000 people, over 7,000 people
Mhm.
have been infected with the virus. Over 6,000 have been healed from the virus, and I think over 90 people have died of the virus. So I think the recovery rate is probably still.
My question would just be that, like, how has this played into for you and your colleagues? For instance, when it comes to mental health, fatigue, diet, physical activity, how are you guys managing? Because the medical laboratory science field is a field that is somewhat underappreciated. But I feel that this pandemic really brought to light how important the field is. So how do you and your colleagues, how do you cope with fatigue, your mental health, food? Do you eat quite frequently or less frequently? So yeah.
Okay, so at first when we started, we were just 7 working on that. So we were overstressed, we barely ate, and we were mostly tired. But then as time went on, more people were recruited, and so we got to have some days off.
Mhm.
So yeah, for now, I think it's good to go. but we don't have, when it comes to break time, we don't have a specific break time because samples come anytime. So we don't really have a good diet. Sometimes we eat once a day. Yeah, at most twice a day. But then, I think it's better than when it first started. And the fact that we have rest days now.
Okay. Yeah. So over time, it's gotten better.
Yes.
And these are just random questions. And initially, there were many videos going online, social media, and some other platforms about what the virus could be like, what it would cause. So, how scared were you? Very much scared?
Yeah, I remember some of the stories. Well, some were on the news, like in the US, where the refrigerated trucks bring into hospitals because there wasn't enough space in the mortuaries to keep people. And then there were some other fantastical ones online where people were talking about people releasing tigers in Russia to make sure people stayed in their houses. So there are lots of weird stories all around. Did that ever affect what you thought about the virus?
At first, yes, we were scared. Personally, I was scared. But then we started to use immune boosters and also came to realize that once we wear our personal protective equipment and abide by different regulations, we're good to go. So yeah, there was this fear at first, but then we got over it.
All right.
Immune boosters, those were some of the things I not talked much about a lot during last year, because these besides diet, physical activity, the fear that most people had, at least knowing that, okay, at least even if I can boost my immune system, that should help, or eating a particular food or taking extra supplements, that would have probably helped with the fear, I guess.
So, lab experts, we hope you've been able to learn something through this discussion. Talked a bit about COVID-19 testing in Benin. Tell us what it's like in your country if you're not from Benin, and also what's the results of various actions taken in your countries by governments were. And see you next time to talk more NedLab.